All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys might be a little bit surprised, but we told you it's going to be an interesting week. So today, it's Friday. We're bringing you our StarStock episode. So first things first, please stay tuned till the end. Conrad's breaking down the NBA index, so that's going to be hugely helpful for you guys. But let's get into the show. Cage, I sent over some of the StarStock data. I'll tell you, it's going to be a quick episode, but I want to share something right off the bat, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Yep.
Something that I think will be hugely helpful for people that are able to think long-term. We're in a unique period of time where soccer Euro 2020 and World Cup 2022, and I said Euro 2020, but it's this year, are going to be back-to-back. So what I want you guys to pay attention to is two things. In the last month, 2 months, StarStock's adding a ton of soccer cards. Watch how they move when you get into these elimination stages of Euro 2021. Watch how Cristiano cards move. Watch how Timo Werner on Germany. Watch these young guys and see how their performances impact the cards. Here's why. You'll be able to use that information so that you can buy cards on eBay or ComC or other places before next year's World Cup, send them into StarStock, and take advantage of the same benefits. Does that make sense, Cage?
Yeah. I mean, soccer more than others. You got all these players out there. You know, somebody scores a goal or has, one of these crazy plays and it's televised. It becomes, really spotlighted. Not baseball. We'll talk baseball. There's like games every day. Even basketball, right? Today, Paul George is a hero. Last week, Paul George was, 2 days ago, Paul George was, everybody was dumping his stuff. Soccer, not so much, soccer, there's just so many people, there's so many games, and, people make names for themselves in these tournaments, just like Mbappe did, last World Cup, right? Kind of, wasn't his thing, and all of a sudden he was the household name. So it's an interesting thing. So yeah, I think it's a cool idea. Also, because people are not yet going to StarStock for soccer, you might have some opportunity to make some arbitrage plays there, 100%.
I'm with you. There's some people behind me, so you might hear some.
So, by the way, for the YouTube folks who are getting an awesome view here, there's like what would you say those people are, like 183 years old? I mean, they could hear you, I'm sure, but
they're having the time of their life too. It's amazing.
They're enjoying it. They're partying. So Andrew, we can't tell you where he is, but because he's in the country at extradition. I mean, normally he hides in Mexico, to stay away from the federales and stuff like that. But he's back here right now, and if people knew where he was, they'd be scooping him up off the street. He'd have to answer for all of his criminal activities for the last decade. But, he's currently somewhere in America. Where in the world is Carmen Sandy Goldberg is the game I like to play. And Carmen Andy Goldberg. Go ahead, man.
There was a fun discussion in our group chat today. Why is the StarStock NBA index down so much from its highs? And I think when you lump in, I don't know if it's 30 cards or 40 cards, you don't get the full picture. So I think it's important to separate like the stars, like how do I word this? The Jason Tatums, the Zions, the Lucas, the Treys, the cream of the crop versus like Kobe White, Tyler Hero, and those guys. I think what's really dragging down the index is the fact that Tyler Hero cards, PSA 10, at their peak, they were $300.
Yeah.
Now they're $75. Same thing with Kobe White. Whereas if you look at Jason Tatum cards, Jason Tatum PSA 10s, they're still selling for a premium to what they were just a year ago.
Listen, that your point is great. The emerging 30 index, that emerging 30 index has Kyle Kuzma in it, and his cards are down. We'll talk about that, but when we go through the worst performance, it's down 60% week over week. Like that will bring the entire index down.
What stuck out to you? Because for me, what stuck out was the baseball index is actually up.
Yes, that is a huge thing. That baseball, the index is up with, and on the back of some interesting names, right? Like Vlad Guerrero makes sense, but Gavin Lux going up and Keston Hiura going up. I mean, I get it. They're young guys, they're names, and they've been beaten down. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I like that it was up. That's the first index that's been up for a while. We've been tracking the indexes on there, but honestly, and look, let's not do crazy cartwheels just yet. It was up 1.5%, the MLB index, but it's the first time we were able to report to you guys using StarStock data that any of the indexes are up. So it is noteworthy. What do I think? I think this data is great because, it tells you what you think it would tell you. And, some of it is leading and some of it is trailing indicators, right? The top 5 players by sales, it should surprise no one that Terrence Mann was being bought hand over fist last week. I mean, he had his big 39-point game, the huge game, move forward in the playoffs, and that Kevin Herter is making that list also. 2 of your guys, you were on them weeks ago. They're finally being bought up. Some interesting ones. We talk about this all the time. What's on the worst performer will be on the top performer, and vice versa. R.J. Barrett is on the worst performers, right behind Kyle Kuzma, and he's down like almost 50%, like 45%. Week over week. That's not somebody I'd look to rebound next week. He may rebound leading into the next season, and beating his cards down almost 50% is probably an overreaction to them, being eliminated from the playoffs. But I wouldn't expect a bounce back next week. He's not going to be playing. There's not going to be any news on him. The flip side is Michael Porter Jr., the number 1 performer, up 36%. I would expect him to be on the worst performers next week because this team was eliminated pretty badly. He didn't really have, any great games to kind of write home about in any of those in games in their series. And I think when we, approach next week, you're going to see Michael Porter Jr. basically on that low performer. Here's one that I think bucks the trend, kind of stuck out for me. John Collins was the number 3 top performer, up 15%. Normally I'd say, hey, the guy's up. Next week, look for him to be on the down list. I expect him to continue to go up. He might even have a back-to-back appearance on that list because besides Trae Young, and he's the big name, right?
You were on John Collins pretty early, Cage.
Yeah,
you were on John Collins pretty early.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. And listen, I'm not going to pat myself on the back for that because I think if we would have bought John Collins before the season, his prices are still less now just because everybody has come down. Even though his performance has been great and he's a top performer, he's in the playoffs, and he's doing well. We talk about it with Trae. Trae had as great of a season as you could have, but I was selling his stuff before the season for twice as much as what I could get for it now. People are messaging me, am I selling these cards? And I'm like, no, they're too cheap right now. I mean, they just are, I don't know exactly what to do with the Trae Young, but John Collins is an interesting thing because I think he's improving his stock as much as anyone on that Atlanta Hawks team, right? He's hitting tough shots. He's on the receiving end of some flashy alley-oop style dunks off the glass, you name it. He's hitting important 3-pointers. You talked about how he hit a big shot, in the fourth quarter of game 1. And I think he has the ability to be somebody who repeats on that top performer list.
Let me ask you. This is a guy that I don't think you were super high on. Devin Booker. He had that 40-point game, but his last 2 games have been subpar. He's been 5 for 16, 20 points, 7 turnovers 2 games ago.
Yep.
And then yesterday he was 5 for 21 with 15 points and 4 turnovers.
Yeah. He was creating. He had more assists than he usually does in the game. But it's funny. We talked about this on our this week's episode of Conrad Uncaged, which hasn't been released yet. So look for that. Conrad talks about which players currently in the playoffs, stand to gain or lose the most on their card values in the short term and in the long term for continued success in the playoffs. And we talked about Devin Booker, and Conrad seems to think that Booker's cards will improve, but that he still needs to do more. Like, one championship right now does not cement him as like an all-time great or Hall of Fame player because he's still pretty young and he's got a lot of stuff to go ahead. I think the person on that team who really stands to gain the most is Chris Paul, just because he's already cemented his legacy as far as individual greatness. It's that championship that he doesn't have. A lot of people have won a championship, but they don't go on to be great. Booker, he's an interesting character, right? Because, he could go out there and be dominant, drop 70 points, has comparisons to Kobe. But also he has the ability to vanish in these games, right? Like, I watched the entire game last night from tip to final horn, right? And Devin Booker was basically non-existent for a majority of the game. You know what I mean? He was not in most of the big plays. Ayton was, Cameron Payne stepped up a little bit. Chris Paul was there on a lot of these big plays. I mean, Booker played a good game. It's a better game than I could ever play, obviously. But, when the lights are shining the brightest and you have the ability to go up 3-0 on a team after coming, off that crazy, game 2, you and I talked about this, right? That game 2 could have went either way. you're going to learn a lot about these teams coming out, especially the Clippers. Are they going to come out and say we should have won, we should be up 2-1, and just and just put the pedal to the metal, or are they going to say, oh well, you know what, there was our game, we might as well get swept now? And obviously they showed their mettle. Booker didn't. Booker didn't show up. Booker didn't come out and drop one of his signature games like you would expect someone like Kobe to do, right? That killer instinct, that don't let a team have that life. Because now in the Clippers locker room, you know what they're saying? We're the better team. We had one stolen from us in game 2. We should be up 2-1 in this series now. And you let a team like that breathe, right? It's kind of what happened in the Dallas series, So
this Clippers team's interesting. I didn't think they had the fight in them, but this is the 3rd series in a row where they could have folded, and they're battling. And you're right, with 0.9 seconds away from being up 2-1. Let's move to football.
Yep.
Shall we? Which quarterbacks are you excited about? And let me give you the top valued PSA 10s on StarStock. Josh Allen is $920, Lamar Jackson $850, and Justin Herbert $609. Is there someone not on that list?
Well, Ian thought it was funny. I don't know if you heard him laughing there. He thought it was funny. So I got to tell you, my thought on this
what was funny? I don't know.
He thought that the fact that those are your 3 most valued PSA 10 quarterbacks is hilarious. And, I mean, the funny part about that is think about that. How many combined games have those 3 quarterbacks played? 100 maybe? Less than 100? I mean, Herbert played 1 season, right? Josh Allen's played 3 seasons. Lamar Jackson's played 2 seasons, right? So, I mean, what are we talking about? It's less than 100 games total between all of them, right? And yet those are your most valued PSA. And I know it's an emerging index and it's weighted towards younger players. But think about what we're saying here, right? Josh Allen had 1 good year. Now, he has gotten better, right? He has gotten better over time. But I'm scared by Josh Allen's prices right now. I am. Right? Because Josh Allen is in an interesting spot. He's in almost like a Mahomes spot, right? Where you've built. His cards are priced for perfection. You basically need Josh Allen to either win the MVP or get to like the AFC Championship game this year. You know what I mean? I think the price would be justified if he plays at an MVP level, like he maybe he loses it to Mahomes and then loses to Mahomes in the championship game, but he's like 1A, 1B with Mahomes. You put him in that guy. That's how his cards are priced right now. I mean, they're priced for perfection. Lamar Jackson won an MVP. Already has been to the the top game, the championship game. Hasn't been to hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, so he's not Mahomes. None of these guys are, but he's less than Josh Allen. I mean, that's a little interesting. And Justin Herbert, I mean, honestly, my take on Justin Herbert might be the biggest bubble of this year. And that's saying a lot. People are paying money for pickles. People are paying money for apes. People are paying money for the most ridiculous things here, NFT, I think he may be a bigger bubble than any NFT, any VFriend, any crazy thing that's out there. I think he might be the one. Because, again, I think the biggest thing he did last year was he didn't get hurt, and he played better than Tua, right? Burrow got hurt. Tua was not exactly, the greatest quarterback of all time. He won some games. But Herbert became the best player out of that crop of quarterbacks. I don't think he did enough to really justify, the prices. Not to mention, think of who he's behind here now, right? These are all AFC quarterbacks. So all of them are chasing Mahomes. Now we just talked about Josh Allen. We talked about Lamar Jackson. We got Burrow coming back, supposed to be healthy for week 1, going to be starting the season. Justin Herbert, they're all in the same division, and these are all young guys. I'm not saying division, same conference. They're all in the AFC. I mean, only one of them can make it to the Super Bowl. Only 2 of them can make it to the AFC Championship game.
Explain the Herbert phenomenon. Why do you think that happened? And can you compare it to an NBA player?
I mean, so I don't think you want to compare it to an NBA player. I think you can compare it to a soccer player. And here's why, right? I think you compare it to an F1 person as well, right? So this year has been nuts. All this money came into cards, right? All this money came. Baseball cards, people have always been buying rookies. People have always been shoveling their money into the top rookies. It's been, you have your Wander Franco this year. You had your Tatis and your Vlad Guerrero and you had your Yordan Alvarez last year and your Bichette last year and you had your Aaron Judge and your Clay Bellinger and you had, every year same thing. Basketball, you say the same thing, right? Prior to this year, people were already investing money in Luka, in Trey. right? People were investing money in Ben Simmons. They were. People were already paying attention to the draft and buying their prospects, right? People already had Giannis cards because he had started to do well, right? People were already doing that. But guess what happened this year? Everybody jumped into the sport, and then everybody jumped into sports cards, and then we had this phenomenon of, well, basketball's already popped, all right? And we listened to influencers who told us to get into vintage, and vintage already popped. What are we going to do now? Well, we got to jump into football. Well, who's the poster child? Who's the Zion of football? And some people put their money on Burrow and got hurt because he got hurt. And Herbert started to take the lead, and he became that shiny, as you like to say, you say sexy new toy. He became that shiny new toy. I mean, Herbert's not a bad-looking dude, but, I don't know if I call him, I don't know if I use your phrase, but people, they move their money from sports, and that was the guy that you put your money. He was the Zion. He was the lead horse. And that brings a lot of attention, also brings high prices. The same thing happened with Haaland and Mbappe, because people who didn't know soccer but were just moving their card money into another sport were now bringing the prices of Haaland and Mbappe up, and they may be good, they may be great, they may also be overpriced if they don't turn into the next Michael Porter Jesus. Same thing with F1. There are like 4 people in the world who know an F1 driver's name. But everybody's putting their money in Lewis Hamilton because that's the guy, right? I mean, he happens to win almost every race, so I guess. But the people who don't know, that became the football thing. He became kind of like the flag bearer for football. He became if you're going to put money in football, go buy your Herbert cards. Fun follow on Twitter, Phil Hughes. He was creating, a former Yankee pitcher. He was creating a huge collection of Tatis cards, sapphire cards, you name it. And then he was moving to football. I'm going to get the Herbert rainbow. You know what I mean? So, that was, that's a perfect example of all right, I'm going to put my money in football. Let me just get the Herbert cards. And I got to tell you, I think Herbert could be outperformed badly this year by Joe Burrow. I think he might be outperformed this year by the new shiny toy, Trevor Lawrence. When people start to put their money in there. So Herbert scares me. And I got to tell you, all these guys scare me. I like Lamar Jackson. I think he's the one who could really, while he's still young and can use his legs and do things on the field no one else can do, I think he's, got the most upside, believe it or not. But his cards are not cheap either. You know what I mean? His card, $850. I mean, that's not a cheap card either, his PSA 10. So, yeah. So what scares me? All those guys scare me at those prices.
I think it's worth looking at some bargain plays. And 2 guys that stick out to me are Sam Darnold in a new environment. He's 140 for his PSA 10, which is in a 7th of these other guys. And then Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor is worth really considering. His StarStock A is $14. So that, to me, instead of going for these high-end guys who have so much expectation built in, I would go for guys who have no expectation and are a bargain play.
Yeah. I mean, Jalen Hurts, StarStock A, is $52. I know you're a Philly guy, so I know you want to bring him up.
He has expectations on him.
Yeah, but $52 for a StarStock A is almost nothing. He does have expectations, but he also has no more Carson Wentz breathing down his throat, right? Breathing down his neck, breathing down his throat. That would be pretty terrible. Not a visual anybody needs to see. But you know who I'm not completely sold on yet? Jordan Love. I got to see it. I'm one of those guys. I got to see it, right? And I understand the people buying his cards and running his prices up because everybody expects Aaron Rodgers to not be there. But 1, let me see that Aaron Rodgers is not there, and then 2, let me see that you can actually play. That before I start putting money in. I haven't seen the guy throw a pass really. Let's see what he looks like when he's actually got to play. So
I love it.
Scares me too.
Guys, stay tuned. Like we said, Conrad's going to really break down the NBA index. If you're going to go to the StarStock website, and I think you should, you're going to see a new tab there. There's a tab called Breaks now, and it's pretty cool. It's a new initiative that they're doing, so I'm excited to follow along. They've got some breaks starting July 1st. You can just go right to their website, starstock.com, and you're going to see there's a new tab out there called Breaks. Hopefully we'll have more information on that. Cage, any final words?
No, guys. I mean, listen, I love StarStock because it's a place where people irrationally move their money out of their portfolio for guys to move into something else. I love it for that very reason. It allows you to capitalize on stuff. People are starting to move their money into football now. People are swinging their money into basketball. There are people out there who were investing in baseball players who were hurt and they just think of that as dead money, dead cash. It's okay to cut your losses. But when I see somebody like not Wander Franco, he's in there. People are buying him like crazy. But I see somebody like Lubob, like Lewis Robert, on the worst performers list. When what justifies that? That's literally just people selling out of that card and bringing the price lower to get out from under that. That means there are bargains to be had on players like that. If you're willing to stash that guy's card, kind of like a dynasty league in fantasy baseball, if you're willing to stash a player, there's upside there with really low risk when you're buying it from somebody who's just looking to get out from under the card. And you're definitely able to get it on StarStock for cheaper than you'd get it anywhere else. So that's what I look for. Go ahead.
Who are your MLB MVPs halfway through the season? Vladdy.
It really does depend on what happens, right? Vlad Guerrero is great, but Toronto's team is not that great. If the Mets were to turn it around, I would give serious MVP consideration to Jacob deGrom. I mean, that guy, it seems like every time we talk, he's getting another shutout performance of at least, 5, 6, 7 innings, whatever it is he's doing. I mean, I'd give some serious consideration to him for MVP.
You know what's as a pitcher, I think about this. So you're performing at just an elite all-time level, right, this season? Yep. So what do the batters do? They go and they watch film, right?
Yep.
And he still performs. These guys watch every one of his pitches, and he still keeps getting better. So that's
sticky stuff, no sticky stuff. You haven't heard his name really mentioned, with any of that craziness and stuff there. So, listen, as far as like who to watch, cardboard relevant, he is not. But it might be funny because people beat the heck out of him. In April, this guy stunk. In May, he was on the bench. In June, he's going to be in the running for like player of the month with the month that he's having right now. And in July, you might see him on the All-Star team just because people suck at catcher offensively. Gary Sanchez, guys. I mean, it's just he had another home run yesterday. He's having a crazy June. And, I like to look for those guys that were just beat up and left for dead. And then all of a sudden they kind of turn it on because they're bargains you can get. There are probably 5 other names like that you can name. I'm a Yankee fan, so I watch the game. So obviously, I see him starting to turn it around tremendously. So that's a guy that I look for myself. That's kind of the cheat code for all this, right? If you watch the games, you'll be the first one to see who's playing that might not have headlines yet, who's turning it around, who's going to be a bargain. That's what gets us actual fans. A little bit of a heads up from the guys who are just fans of sneakers looking to make money in cards. Enjoy, fellas. Enjoy, ladies.
Have a good weekend, Luca Nation. I think we're going to bring back a coffee and cage on Sunday. I think we got to do it.
It could be fun. I want to be getting my kids ready for summer camp, so that should be fun. Doing a lot of laundry. Take care, everybody.